But the reality is our politics is split. And I think, first of all, when you look at some of these polls, let's understand several different things. First of all, the poll that came out this weekend from the Wall Street Journal, that was with a Republican pollster who did business with Paul Manafort. So that poll is irrelevant to me, okay? It's an absolute bullshit poll. But here's the thing. If you look at any poll, many of the polls are also where they read it because a significant number of Democrats think Biden is too old. The point is this here. Barring anything health-wise, Biden is going to be the nominee. And any poll today means nothing to me. It means absolutely nothing. What I'm looking at the fact is that when he steps out there, you're going to see, I think, in many ways what you saw 4 years ago, where Biden is saying this person cannot and will not and should not be back in the Oval Office. And he's done so many things since that you have independent voters, you've got other voters who are not going to be voting for Republican. I just simply think, absolutely, the best chance for a Biden re-election is to face Donald Trump.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. In another way, you don't have where does he get his votes from? The Democrats aren't going to vote for him, even if they think Biden is
right. He has a ceiling. Trump has a ceiling. Biden has a floor. That's a different deal.
Exactly. Because those same Democratic voters that will say, he's too old to run, I want somebody else to run, I want somebody else to run against him. The bottom line is if Biden's on the ballot, Democrats are voting for Biden. It's a very different question. Then you look at the independents. Anywhere from 30 to 70% of independents aren't going to vote for Donald Trump facing these 91 criminal felony charges, right? So who are they going to vote for? In the end, whether they like it or not, they're going to vote for Biden and maybe someone else. There are not enough votes for Trump in order to win this general election. You got to believe that. And the trials are starting in March of 2024. So where's he going to get his votes? Are the MAGA supporters and those disenfranchised, poor white, Southern and rural voters, are they going to who have never voted before? It costs time, money, and resources to cultivate them and to have them come out in the masses. And it's just not going to happen. Why? Because he spent $40 million on legal fees. He's going to spend 40, 80, maybe even $100 million on legal fees. That gets old. Those are monies that can be spent on finding new voters, and it's being spent on lawyers. So listen, he'd have to run the table and beat all 91 of these felony criminal state and federal charges in order to be free to enter the White House. It's never been done in the history of this country. And I got to tell you, you may not want to vote or rather bet against Donald Trump, but I'm betting against him that he can't beat all 91 of these charges.
And here's the thing that jumps out. Here's the thing that jumps out here, Rebecca, that I think is critically important. You still have to look at elections as, frankly, statewide elections. The reality is, we saw that Supreme Court race in Wisconsin, where that female jurist, she beat the Republican by 11 points. Over the next year, you may very well have the Wisconsin Supreme Court rule against political gerrymandering, rule for abortion rights, and restore a lot of those powers to Tony Evers, who is the Democratic governor. Okay, so you look at Wisconsin, you look at Pennsylvania, which Biden won by $110,000. You saw Fetterman beat back Dr. Oz there as well. Now you look at Georgia, still extremely competitive. I think it's going to be a tough state to win again, but they can. Then you look at Arizona as well. So the pathway, again, to winning the presidency, he has to win. Remember, he only won by 77,000 votes against Hillary Clinton in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, and in Wisconsin. And so if you're the Biden campaign, you're focusing on that. I keep telling people, these nationwide polls, they mean nothing. A presidential election is based upon a series of state polls, not national polls. Because we already saw what happened. You can win the most national votes and not win the election, Hillary Clinton.
That's right.
So look, You're right about some things, but I also strongly disagree with you about other things.
Such
You're
as?
right. It's too early to look. So it's too early to start looking at polls, like full stop.
No,
We really won't
it's too
know.
early to look at national polls because presidential elections, they are a combination of state results. That's what I'm saying. Who gives a shit if Biden wins, beats Trump by 3 million votes in California? It doesn't matter. There are other states that he has to win. He's gonna win California. So I don't care about California in the national poll. I'm looking at how is he running in Pennsylvania, Georgia, Wisconsin, Arizona, Michigan, Ohio. How's he running in Florida? That's what I'm looking at. And also, what are these crazies in New Hampshire going to do who are now pissed off because the Democrats chose to go with South Carolina first and not New Hampshire and Iowa? That's what I'm looking at.
So yes, I understand I understand your framework, but this is something that I think we need to step back. We're in a completely different world, and Robert's right on this issue. Like those old rules are out the window. And to answer you and Scott's question of where is Trump going to find these people, the same place he found them in 2016. He found people who have been off of the voting roll since the 80s. And so when I tell you, like all my years of doing campaigns where you're looking at voters who are high propensity voters or voters who are low propensity, and for your viewers, what that means is they're likely to turn out and vote. So he literally found people who haven't voted in such a long time, they were no longer on the voting rolls, and he was able to get them out. The second thing is Trump is not the same type of candidate as like a Mitt Romney. He's not the same type of candidate as a Nikki Haley, where he's going to need $1 billion behind him in order for him to generate enough interest and to get enough airtime for people to be aware that he's on the ballot. He is such an incendiary character in American politics. He literally doesn't have to spend $1 in advertising in order to still dominate the airwaves. We've seen that happen. In fact, I will blame some of the mainstream media for his candidacy actually becoming legitimate during fall 2015. Because I remember the summer of 2015 when he was talking about running, he was getting into the race. As we went into the August, the 2-night special.
Oh, I mean, here's the deal. I totally understand in terms of him generating attention. That's not my issue. What I'm saying is the biggest mistake that I see right now is having conversations on this poll says this poll says that. I think right now, again, I'm looking at states. I'm looking at how does the person perform in the states. But the other thing is, how do you shore up weaknesses? When Scott says, where's he going to get the votes from? This is what Trump needs, which is actually how he won in 16. It wasn't just he pulled out people who had not voted. You also had on the Democratic side depressed turnout. There are people who are like, I just can't vote for Hillary Clinton. So what you're facing with is the question is, are you going to see increase in turnout? Republicans are scared to death right now. Why? Because of abortion. They saw how crucial that was in 2022. It's going to be on the ballot in 2024. What I'm just simply saying is, for a lot of people, pump your brakes, calm the hell down, ignore all of these national polls, and the focus needs to be on voter education, teaching people about exactly what's happening. Because when you see polls that show 60 and 70 and 80% of people agreeing with policies that Biden has done, but then you see the same poll going, oh, people say the economy is going so bad. You're like, what the hell are you talking about? And so they have to deal with that. I'm just saying for a lot of folks who are fretting, this is going to be a Biden-Trump matchup. Unless something crazy happens on the GOP side, unless something happens with his health, that's who this is going to be. We better simply be prepared for that to be the matchup.
But crazy is happening right now. Like, here's some breaking news out of Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, they're trying to figure out how to pull that female jurist that just won in the spring. They're trying to pull her off the bench. Impeaching, and that is the test case that they're going to roll out in North Carolina.
Oh, yeah.
The test case that they're going to run through with several of the southern states as well. So what we're seeing on the Republican side right now is they're literally manipulating the rules.
Of course.
In Georgia, they're actively throwing people off of the poll, off of the rolls. So Republicans right now, so their strategy isn't the typical fair gentleman strategy.
No. Their strategy is what they've done. but their strategies, but their strategies, what they've done the last 4 elections. They want to decrease the size of the electorate. They want to ban ballot drop boxes. They want to have voter ID. We already know what they're going to do.
But the Democrats don't have an answer for it right now.
That's not true. Actually, Rebecca, that simply is not true. The Markalized, the LDF, Laws Committee, they have been winning in the courts. They literally have been beating them on many of these voter restrictions. That's simply not true. Now, what you talk about in Wisconsin, yeah, Republicans are floating that, but here's the deal in Wisconsin, all right? And we talked about this on yesterday. You have a woman who beat the Republican by 11 points. It was a statewide race. Republicans make that move, then all of a sudden this race is on the ballot next year. You now could drive serious turnout next year as well. So we already know they're going to cheat to win. We know this. So what I'm saying,
the White House hasn't listed out an answer yet. So when I talk about the Democratic Party, I'm really saying is we need to see what is the White House's strategy for actually beating back on.
No, we don't.
We need to.
No, we don't. No, Rebecca, we can't wait on them.
The White House has an answer for it right now.
But here's Rebecca. Here's my whole point. We don't need to wait on the White House to give an answer. We already know what our answer is, and this is what I've been saying to all our people. Do not give money to political campaigns. Don't send money to the DNC. Send that money to third-party groups who are going to be on the ground. I'm not waiting on Biden-Harris campaign to say, hey, here's our plan. The lawyers, they're like, hey, look, they've already, the DNC cut with Mark Elias and his group. They're still suing. So they're doing their part. What I'm saying is we cannot wait for somebody else to come up with the strategy. I'm saying to our audience, it's going to be Biden versus Trump. We already know that what that thug is going to do. For black people, our job is to drive our numbers. But we cannot, I'm not waiting on anybody who's 2 blocks from here to come up with their strategy. I'm saying black people, we have our own strategy, and that's our own survival. And that's how we got to be focused.
So if we're going to save the day, what do we get out of it? What is the deal that we cut with the White House if indeed we are the cavalry that's going to save this White House?
First of all,
we know black folks are going to be the tipping point. They're going to decide who wins the White House.
Well, no. Hold up. Depending upon the state.
We know.
Depending upon the state. We're not going to be the tipping.
We go state by, but if we go state by state, if we go through the states that's going to tip the election, it's still going to be the black vote that's ultimately going to serve as a tipping point.
No, it's not.
To determine who wins.
Not in Arizona. Not in Arizona. Not in Arizona.
We get Virginia. We get Pennsylvania. We don't need Arizona.
No. Actually, but here's the deal, though. No. You still need Arizona. And that's part of the deal. What Democrats cannot do is do what Hillary did by saying, hey, let's lock down Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. Hey, we're good. No. My deal is I'm assuming Republicans are going to win Georgia this time. You do need Arizona. Robert, go.
Well, look, Roland, just to that point, remember that Donald Trump received $3.5 billion in free media in 2015 to win the 2016 election. So the money in politics thing is now a thing of the past. Donald Trump generates free media. We spent the first 30, 40 minutes of the show giving Donald Trump free media because the Biden campaign has been completely inept when it comes to messaging and when it comes to a press strategy. You're across the damn street from the White House. They have somebody from the White House on this show 3 nights a week, but they're not going to do it. Talk to talk radio show hosts across the country, including my show and including every show on my network. Try to get a Biden official on your damn show. They don't exist. They won't come and talk about the policies. Try to get them to be on a blog or be on a podcast or to talk to people. They won't do it. They are writing the recipe for them to lose this election.
Well, first of all, hold on. No, I got to correct you. I got to correct you. First of all, we ain't got a problem having them on. I'm deciding who I want to have on. I'm not accepting just anybody. So that's first. That's first and foremost. Because also, I get the emails all the time, them offering up folks, so I'm not always saying yes to somebody. That's one. But this is what I'm also saying. I'm saying I'm not interested in waiting on them. What I am saying to black people, we can create our own mechanism And what I am saying is, I had a conversation with LaTosha Brown last night with Black Voters Matter, with Tamika Mallory, Until Freedom. Tamika Mallory and Until Freedom, they are opening their own office next week in Kentucky to take down Daniel Cameron. They're not waiting on anybody else. So what I am saying to our people, damn what Biden and Harris and who they're offering up, we can have our own surrogates, our own messaging, speaking to our own issues. Here's what we know as a fact. What the Republicans are planning to do if they win the White House is going to have severe and dire consequences for Black people. They literally right now are meeting and crafting a plan of action to fire thousands of federal workers. Who over-indexes in the federal government? Black people. They want to have loyalty tests. Who is that going to hurt? Black people. And so what I'm saying is, damn waiting on them to come up with a battle plan. There's a Black battle plan that we should be devising as we speak that speaks to our interests. And when I say our interests, we can sit here and negotiate and make demands of the White House as very well that we should. But I can tell you this, I know what I want to see again if a Biden-Harris is reelected, another 200 federal judges, which then impacts when we sue in the federal system. What I want to see if there's a Biden-Harris reelection is what you've seen with the Department of Justice, where they've been going after prison wardens and jailers. And right now there are 9 patterns and practices investigations in the DOJ in the last 3 years. It was 1 under Donald Trump. So I know what I am asking for. What I'm saying is create our Black plan. Damn waiting on them.
Well, look, Roland, I think Black folks is tired of being political sharecroppers for these people. You can pass a $4 trillion debt reduction plan, a $3.5 trillion omnibus spending bill, $1.7 trillion infrastructure bill. You got a $1.5 trillion Build Back Better bill. You have a Stop Asian Hate Crime bill. You got a Respect for Marriage Act. You got all this huge legislative agenda, but then when it gets down to, hey, can you stop police from beating the hell out of Black people and pass some legislation, they get real quiet.
No, Robert, that's a lie. Robert, that's a damn lie. Robert, the George Floyd, Robert, that is a lie. Robert, that is a lie. No, Robert, that is a lie. Robert, the George FLoyd Justice Act was passed by the House. It gets to the Senate. It was stopped by 2 people, Tim Scott and Lindsey Graham.
But Roland, that's the point that I'm trying to make. How the hell do you pass through a $3.5 trillion omnibus spending bill, but you can't get past 2 people?
Easy, Robert, because Republicans want money too.
You can blame the Republicans on everything.
Robert, no, Robert, let's be real clear. Hold on, Robert. Robert, that's bullshit. Robert, that's bullshit. No, Robert, what was the vote total for the omnibus spending bill?
Enough to pass.
No. What was the vote total?
Enough to pass. It passed.
How many items in the omnibus spending bill the Republicans also want?
They were able to negotiate something where they got it done. The same thing with the Debt Ceiling Reduction Act. The same thing with the. I'm asking again. What was the vote total? The vote total was enough to pass the bill into law.
And what I'm saying with the omnibus spending bill, what you have is Republicans wanted a whole bunch of that money as well. So to say, well, they got enough votes over here because Republicans voted. There wasn't a single Republican, not one, that stepped up and said they will support the George FLoyd Justice Act. Not one. Now, how can you get that passed with only 49 or 50 Democrats?
The way you get it passed is you negotiate the same way they did with all the legislation they got passed.
You could negotiate. You could not negotiate. What are you talking about? Robert, where the fuck were you? Robert, two people were negotiating for the Republicans. Lindsey Graham and Tim Scott. 2 people. We have it on record where 2 of the police unions said, the Fraternal Order of Police was one of them. They said, they contradicted Tim Scott. And they said, not one time did we see Democrats want to defund the police. Tim Scott says, well, the sheriff in my state said, I disagree with this. That's how it got killed. Tim Scott and Lindsey Graham promised the families. I talked to them outside of this building on the anniversary of George Floyd's death. He promised them, we are going to get the Republican votes. They never did. So you can't pass a bill where you need 60 votes if you can't even get one Republican. They negotiated for months. Those two could not get any other Republicans, and they killed the bill. So let's stop acting like Biden and Harris couldn't do anything and get it passed when Tim Scott is the reason why there is no George FLoyd Justice Act. We got to be willing to say it and not run from it.
Look, Roland, the point that I'm trying to make is...
No. You said they couldn't get it done, but you got to explain to black people why it didn't get done.
Let me explain why they didn't get it done. Look, Roland.
That you're wrong.
Look, Roland, just on this
wrong,
point.
You're right.
Scott, hold on. Okay, Rob, make your point. I'm going to Scott. Go.
The point I'm trying to make when we're talking about negotiating things, the giving and taking. Let's take the debt ceiling.
No. Robert. Stay on the George FLoyd Justice Act.
Let me give you the example that I'm trying to give you. They were on the debt ceiling deal. They were able to get people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Kevin McCarthy to vote for something that was against their entire caucus. Take that for a point. We've heard Republicans talking about reforming the Department of Justice, to reforming the FBI. Roll that into an omnibus criminal justice reform bill where you say, we'll reform the DOJ and the FBI if you incorporate that into the George FLoyd Justice and Policing bill and also the Tyree Nichols Duty and Intervene bill. And that's how you get the votes that you need to have a compromised bill.
Robert, you're talking about the House. It passed the House. The House ain't the problem, Robert. It was the Senate.
Roland, the House is the problem now because you have a Republican majority in the House.
Robert, listen to me, Robert. Robert, listen to me. All they needed, Robert, in the House was a one-vote majority, 218. That's all they needed. In the Senate, they needed 60. Let me say it again. In the House, all they needed was 218. 217 could be against, it passes. That's 435. In the Senate, they couldn't do 50-50, and Kamala Harris breaks the tie. They couldn't do 51-49. They had to get to the 60-vote threshold. The negotiation that you're talking about, you say they should have done, they did that. We had Congresswoman Karen Bass on this show. We had Senator Cory Booker on this show. They were the lead negotiators. Everything they put on the table, they could not do it. It was Senator Tim Scott who came in and said, oh, y'all want to defund the police? That's a bridge too far, and he killed it. He didn't even call the family members to tell them if they were stopping negotiations on the deal. That's what the hell happened. So I'm trying to figure out what in the hell are you talking about that you could have somehow got it through the Senate when they clearly did not want the bill at all?
Because they got everything else they want to do through. You can't tell me you got everything else on your agenda done, but then when you get the black folks...
You didn't get everything on your agenda.
I ran out of steam.
You didn't get everything on your agenda.
I got infrastructure done. I got the debt ceiling done. But black folks, wait, just vote for me one more time and I'll get to you next time.
No, that's not what it is. What it is understanding the very people who are against you, and when a Senator Tim Scott sits there and straight up lies on Face the Nation. And then when I text him, he couldn't answer when I said, wait a minute, their proposal was the same one you proposed last year. He stopped answering. His staff stopped answering. They were full of shit from the beginning. And then Senator Tim Scott then spoke against the crap that was in the executive order that Trump signed. I said, well, wait a minute, hold up. You stood there and supported that. Here was the real deal. He was supposedly for police reform when Trump was there. He was not going to give Biden that victory. You know why? Because Scott was running for president all along. That was the real deal, Scott. So we got screwed. We got screwed because Senator Tim Scott was running for president, and he needed that sheriff in South Carolina supporting him. That's the fact. Scott, make your point.
Tim Scott said 3%. How could that be your strategy? The problem that Robert Patillo is having with you and your analysis is because you sound like an apologist for the Biden-Harris.
No, I sound like a fat giver.
Blame Tim Scott. I'm telling you what you sound like, right?
No, hold on, but I'm telling you what happened. Okay, you tell me what happened then. Tell me what happened.
The Harris team didn't get it done, and you don't want to point fingers at them.
No, you're wrong. Tell me what happened.
Both of them. Point fingers at both of them.
No,
right?
tell me, no, Scott. What happened?
People ain't voting for Republicans.
What happened?
They voting for Democrats, and that White House didn't get it done.
Let me say it again. Hold on, Scott. I'm gonna ask you again. No, Scott. I'm gonna ask you to answer this.
No,
Scott. No, Scott. It passed the House. Scott, it passed the House. You tell me how. No, hold on, Scott. Hold on, Scott. No, Scott. Hold on, Scott. No, Scott. Answer the question. Scott, answer the question. It passed the House. You tell me how they could have got it through the Senate.
I got a
amend the rules package
that says I'm the president of the United States, and if I do everything humanly possible to get those votes in the Senate, to convince those 2 Republicans.
No, Scott, you needed 10 Republicans. Scott, you needed 10 Republicans.
He just gave up.
Scott, you needed 10 Republicans.
Don't get it done.
Scott, let me ask you again, Scott. Scott, I'm going to ask you again, Scott. How do you get 10 Republicans when you can't get 2? I'll wait.
Then don't promise it then. Then don't promise it if you can't get it.
No, let me ask you a question.
Mansion. You can't even manage mansion. It's pathetic.
I want to know again. Scott, answer the question. How can you get 10 if you can't get 2?
I said my piece on this.
No, Scott, you're not even answering. You can't even answer the question.
But the Democratic
you can't even answer it. You can't even answer it.
You sound like an apologist for Biden-Harris.
What I sound like is somebody who actually paid attention, who talked to the principals, who hold up, excuse me. Let me say it again.
You ain't right about everything.
Hold up. But Scott, let me ask you a question. Scott. Did you have any conversations with the Democrat negotiators? Any?
Sure I did. Talk to them all the time.
No, Scott. Hold on, Scott. On this bill, did you have any conversations with Congressman Karen Bass and Senator Cory Booker about these negotiations?
Did you?
Yes.
Did you?
I am not done. Hold up, Scott. Scott, I'm not done. Hold up, Scott. Scott, wait a minute. Scott, did you have any conversations with Tim Scott about these negotiations?
No.
Scott, hold up. Did you have any conversations with the families of the people who were victims of police violence who were part of the negotiations?
Yeah, on your show.
Okay, so help me out. So let me be clear. You didn't talk to none of the Democrats negotiating, none of the Republicans, and only on the show talk to the families. I talked to all 3, so why in the hell should we listen to you?
Get it done. I'm results driven. I believe results-driven leadership.
Well, what I do is I don't just talk. But here's what I do, Scott. Here's what I do, Scott. I don't just talk on a show. I talk to the principals, and that's the difference between being informed and uninformed. Scott, you're uninformed. You're uninformed. Scott, the only way you know about the negotiations, because hell, I'm the one who told you. Rebecca, make your point. Rebecca.
So, I mean, there's different tools that we've seen that happen in the past, especially Mitch. Something that we've seen that the Republicans do really well in the Senate is they either suspend the rules or they amend the rules package. And for your viewers to understand that, it's the rules of how the Senate works with what is passage, like whether you need 50+1 or whether or not you need 60 in order for something to advance out of the Senate. And so one thing that I will say, the Democrats could experiment and figure out, all right, are we going to suspend the rules or are we going to amend the rules package and change what that threshold? Because there's nothing in the Constitution that says you have to have 60 votes in order for something to pass the Senate. What happens at the beginning of each Congress is on the House side and the Senate side, both leaderships determine what are the rules for something to determine passage. So in the Senate, one of the tools that the senators can do, one of the things that Schumer could have done was either suspend the rules, change the rules package, or figure out, okay, we know if this is a particular legislative package that deals with money, then you could also do different maneuverings in order.
But the George FLoyd Justice Act wasn't dealing with money.
I
worked on the Hill on the Affordable Care Act. And one of the different things that we floated around, I worked for Congressman Dingo, is figure out, okay, if we actually have to fight on the Senate side in order to get that passed, because remember a couple people, there was the open seat in
it was in Massachusetts, Scott Brown.
Yeah, Scott Brown. So it was sitting down with parliamentarians on the Senate side to figure out, okay, so what do we do in order to get this thing passed? What are our different avenues? So that happens on each major piece of legislation.
And that was,
while I hear you on the technical aspects, you are right, Roland, that it was hard for the Democrats to pass it. I don't think it was impossible if they had enough will, if they wanted to expend political capital.
Again, and hold up, and one second, excuse me, and you said in order to do that, then that meant Senator Chuck Schumer then would have to lead his Democratic caucus to change the rules. And to do that, how many votes would he have needed to change those rules?
He would have needed 60 to change the rules.
Stop, hold on one second. One second. You said he would need 60. How many Democratic votes did he have?
He had 50.
And really he had 48 because Sinema and Manchin would not have gone with it, correct?
Right.
But I've seen Mitch.
I'm stating. But you just said in order to change. For everybody who's watching, you said in order
to change the rules, you would need, I believe, is 60 that you to adopt the rules.
So in order to change.
Wait a minute. If we go back to the beginning.
Hold on one second.
I don't think we needed 60.
Hold on. You said in order to change the rules, you would have needed 60. And you needed 60 for the George FLoyd Justice Act. You couldn't get to 60. Because in order to change it, you would need to convince 10 Republicans to do it. Do you actually think...
Or at the beginning of session, I don't think you would have needed 60 because technically there's no rules that are being operated on at the very beginning of the session to adopt the rules.
But the Senate was tied, and they would have to negotiate, correct? They would have to negotiate with McConnell on that, correct? Because remember, it was 50-50.
And there's trillions of dollars to negotiate.
Oh, I got you. I understand. But
it requires a smart tactician
to
do so. Yes.
And what I'm saying is, the point is this here, if you needed 60, they wasn't going to give you 10 to change the rules to make it easier for you. So what I need our folks to do is also to be aware, which is also why I was going so hard for Barnes and Beasley, because the closer, if we were able to get 52, 53, 54, you actually shrink your totals just a little bit. And that right there is why we need to have people who understand not just politics, but also when somebody says, well, this didn't happen, we need to be deeper than mustard on a hot dog and ask the question, why? What happened? And then if it did not happen, then say what needs to happen in the next election with the results to get closer to what our goal is. That's what we actually have to do.